Hello, everybody. How are you today? My name is David. Well, it is the 13th day of February. We're nearly through the halfway point of the month. It is Thursday afternoon, 2020, and if you've watched my other videos, you've noticed I'm not in the usual place nor position that I'm usually in. Today, I am in the bed. I'm not feeling very well. Y'all know what the illness I have to battle with, but sometimes the medicine that I have to take for it just basically makes me feel pretty, actually, sometimes it makes me feel worse than the illness. So it's just one of those days, but that does not mean that I am going to not do some work for the Lord, because He's given me another day upon this earth. He's blessed me. So I'm gonna truck right along, and I'm gonna put some content up, and we're gonna go from there. We're gonna start today's video in the second chapter of Timothy in the third verse, and I want to talk about a couple things. But the first thing I want to talk about is something we see a lot of today: selfishness and pride. And then I want to talk about something I found very fascinating. My head is chocked full of what I call useless information from the years and years of watching documentaries and reading books, history books, not novels or nothing. I can't stand that. But reading history books. I'm going to talk about a couple things from the past that I've noticed, and you might find it interesting. But first, we're going to start with the third chapter, 2 Timothy, and I'm going to start with the second verse. I'm going to read a couple verses, and it goes as follows: For men shall be lovers of themselves, own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good. We talked about that yesterday or the other day. Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And I'm going to stop it right there. That was the second chapter, or the 2 Timothy, third chapter, verses 2, 3, and 4, and that is the King James Version of the Holy Bible. Well, selfishness, we see that every day in every aspect of our lives. People today are more about themselves, what you can do for them more than what they can do for you. We see this in just about every aspect of life, no matter if it's someone, high up in stature in society, all the way down to the lowliest. There has always been selfishness. And one thing that I want to touch on is the young people disobedient to parents. Now, you've always had that to some aspect of that, no matter what, through generations after generations. There's always children that will disobey and be disobedient to their parents. That's been part and parcel from way back. But today I find it more prevalent than I've ever seen it at any time in my lifetime. But the young people do not listen to their parents. And I want to reiterate something real quick. In a lot of instances, it's the parents that are just as disobedient to the law, to God, to, everything, because they grew up in the era in the 60s and 70s where they were lawlessness, where they had the free love, the drugs, the party and all of that. So they've passed that on to their children, but yet their children have taken it much further to where now they're a destructive generation. We have a generation that is destructive today. They will soon and violent, and that all stems from a couple things. Actually, it stems from having no belief in God, no morals, no home life, so to speak of, no one to teach them right from wrong, because their parents were the same way in a lot of aspects. I find this a lot more with people that lean towards the left than the right or the conservative side. But that's just my own personal opinion. That does not mean that is yours. That's just from what I've seen throughout my years. But We obviously have a lot of people that brag and boast. We have a lot of people that's more concerned about making money and pride and being greedy today than practically ever before. And we see this because, again, it's a lack of belief in God. It's a lack of having those uh, moral standards that the Lord instills in each and every one of us. We all have them, but the sad part is a lot of us do not adhere to them. We turn our backs, just as we turn our backs on the Lord, we turn our backs on, you know, morality. We turn our backs on what should be right. I did a video the other day, you know, where I talked about Isaiah uh, chapter 5, verse 20, where it says, good is evil. They see good as evil and evil is good, you know, and this goes along those lines. And it says it in there. They truly, truly, you know, lack empathy. They lack any type of compassion for their fellow man. We see the homelessness on the streets. And that's one thing Jesus taught us, is for the poor, to take care of those that have not, to give of yourself, you know. But you don't see that. And that has a lot to do with America's morality today in 2020. And I will still say this day after day. When you turn your back on the Lord, when you deny God's existence, when you deny His Son Jesus Christ, these are the type of things that happen. These are the types of people that come to the front, that come to the forefront. We see it in our news media. We see it in our politicians in D.C., the high-headedness, putting people up on a pedestal. We see this day in and day out throughout the whole societal structure, from, like I said, the top on down, no matter if it's in a corporation, all the way down to someone that sweeps the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, not that's a lowly job. It's a job. It's making money, but you get my point. The responsibility ain't as great as if you were head of a corporation or a big CEO of, say, you know, a big corporation here in the United States. So that is a lot to do with being what we see today, lacking morals, and goes a long way with 2 Timothy verses chapter 3, verses 2, 3, and 4. It does really start at home with the children and the disobedience. It really, really does. I started this with that, and it leads on throughout your life. But for me, the last thing I want to say on this before I head into the other topic is, it starts at home, and when you deny God and you deny His Son Jesus Christ, this is what happens. This is the type of society that evolves out of that disbelief, out of that denial. And my friends, unless America turns back, and we do have the right man in office that is trying to do that, it's only going to get worse. The other thing I want to talk about is something that I notice in times of tragedy. It seems like that's what brings America back to God. Now, this is sad. You should always, always be thankful. You should always, always be thankful for what God gives you. Wake up every day. You know, if you have a loving family, children, wife, you should always be thankful. But the thing is, the only times in life that it seems, at least I'm going to speak of America, that America comes together is through tragedy or times of grief. That's when America will turn to God at its largest, and that is sad. It should be like that every day, not just through tragedy. I'm going to go back to a few times in history and give you a few examples of this, and this is where my useless knowledge comes forward. We'll go back to even World War II. If you remember, now I, of course, wasn't born at that time, but if you remember the beginning of the war, the rise of Hitler, Stalin, what they called the beast of the East, you know, just gobbling up nation after nation, you know, making them submit to communism. America was scared. You had the Japanese in the Pacific that was just gobbling up one island after another, just taking territory after territory. America was scared. Then we had Pearl Harbor, Hitler booting the Allies off of the continent of Europe. America came together. We came together and prayed. We came together and asked God to give us victory. We were one at that time. Once things started turning, the tide started turning against those evil regimes, we forgot God. We forgot. We went right back to our to our 2 Timothy chapter 3, to our selfishness, to our greedy ways, to our having no morality, to forgetting God. Then other times of need come along. I'm going to skip ahead, because I'll make this quick, but I'm going to skip ahead to the early 60s, the closest time the world has ever came to a nuclear holocaust. Again, I was not born at that time, but I know a little bit about it. And of course, I'm talking about October of 1962, when Russia and their leader at that time, Nikita Khrushchev, was sneaking missiles, or actually building missiles, into Cuba. They had placed the mediums, what they called the Sandal medium ballistic missiles that could reach all the way up to D.C. These were nuclear tipped missiles. We found them basically, I believe, by accident, by doing a flyover, a U-2 spy plane flyover. But the world came closest to destruction in that period of time. JFK was our president, and it was known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that is the closest the world has ever come to a nuclear holocaust. And not only was America pulled together, turned to God and prayer, but the world was truly united. At least the Christian, or the ones that did believe in God of the Bible, was united like never before. And again, once the situation decreased and people realized that we were going to be okay, it went back to the same old thing. This is just example after example. Two more quick examples. 1970, April of 1970. This is America, Apollo 13. They had an explosion on board on the way to the moon. We really thought that we were not going to get the astronauts back. Those three were going to die. And America came together and prayed for those three. I believe it was Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Schweigert. I believe that's his name, the third one. And America came together like never before. Again, came together in prayer and belief and praying to God to bring them home safe. Once that capsule splashed down in the ocean, all that's thrown out the window, went back to the same old, same old. One more, 9/11. America came together again like never before. Same thing. And again, once we got over that, America turned its back on God. So these are just a myriad of examples. So be thankful for what God's given you. Be thankful for your health. Be thankful for your family, because you never know when it could be gone. Don't turn your back on God. Don't ever turn your back on God. And if you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, ask Him into your heart. That's all I got for you today. God bless each and every one of you. Have a wonderful Thursday. Bye-bye.